So I'm Ronnie, obviously, and my business partner is Suhail. I guess I'll give you a bit of a background as to who we are and how we got started in the whole t-shirt game. I started online back in 2011. It was an online baby and maternity flash sales site. It was just me, no investment apart from my own money and a bit of the family's money. So it was a baptism by fire. I learned very quickly what I was good at and what I absolutely sucked at, and that was tracking numbers. But I was great at marketing. So I got on the radar of some pretty successful businesses in Australia, and they approached me to take on their social media management. So that was around the same sort of time that Suhail and I teamed up. So he actually owns a video shop in Nambour, and it's the only remaining one. And it told me one of two things, is that he was a bloody idiot for owning a business that was considered a dying industry, or he had the commitment to stick something out. And being the optimist that I am, it was the second. And well, that's thriving now. So I asked him out on a date. We went, had a hit of golf, and golf. Okay. And I quickly learned that he was an analytical wizard, and I was not going to be able to cheat a stroke here or there because he was tracking all my data. Anyway, so basically after that, we just wanted to get started adding value to our clients, and that led us into Facebook advertising. And we saw shirts popping up, and we saw a few case studies and testimonials and stuff like that. And the money that people were saying they were making was absolutely ludicrous. So we both grew up with parents that said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So we sort of let it go by the wayside. But with this debt hanging over my head from Bambino Brands, there's $100,000 that I'd racked up. And by this time, I had debt collectors and solicitors and whatnot on the phone to me constantly. Like I had no caller ID coming up on my phone. And I think at the worst, it was about 10 calls a day that I was getting. And it plays with your head. But one thing I said to myself was, I want to pay this back. I don't want to quit. I'm not going to go bankrupt. And I want to stay working for myself. So that pressure sort of, it was playing on me. Like Suhail was beside me and doing the social media stuff. But it just got to a head where I really had to do something. So while he's plugging away with the social media stuff and organising content schedules and stuff like that, websites, I started dabbling with doing a few designs. And I think I had about 21, it's quite specific, failed campaigns before we hit our first winner. And it was random stuff. There was no rhyme or reason why we were going into a niche. But it was showing me what you can and can't do. So the whole time, and this is what I say to a lot of people, is when you're getting these failed campaigns, learn from them. Don't just shut them off and go, you know what, it didn't work, so I'll just move on to something else. There's a story in everything when you're tracking that data. So anyway, I came up with this, well, there's a political issue that came up in Australia, and it segregated a certain demographic quite unfairly, and I just came up with a saying that it just somehow resonated with them. So it was the basic, most ugliest design, like Matt was saying, and I put it up. And I can't remember what the budget was. It probably would have been $15 to $20 that day, and it tipped. The goal was 25, and we just actually. Well, we must have made just enough money to go away for a little bit of a holiday, a bit of a getaway. Anyway, it tipped that night. First night there, we fist bumped and we were hooked. It was $250, that was ours, and I think we'd spent $25. Like it was just, it showed us the potential that was in there. So we've still got that niche, and we sell a hell of a lot of shirts into it. But doing that, like we just, refine the imagery and all that sort of stuff and the designs and whatnot. But as with a lot of people, we made a hell of a lot of money through March, April last year. And that was when we first started seeing these age campaigns come through. And being that we were based in Australia, it was a very, very untapped market. very similar to how it is here in Europe. So we did these designs and we put them up, and the problem was trying not to sell a shirt. We had so many campaigns that were tipping. He gets a laugh like Dr. Hibbert out of The Simpsons. And we had so many of these payments coming through. It was like, so this was Teespring, and they'd just do 10 grand bulk payment. So it was, we had, I think, 2 payments of $40,000 come through. It's like 10 grand, 10 grand, 10 grand in a PayPal account. I always believed there was this sort of money out there, but I had never ever had it in my bank account. I'm still blown away by the potential that is in these shirts. So once you get a good idea, like, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So you've got Chris's method of digging really deep in interest. You've got other ways of getting a scalable saying and launching across a whole heap of niches. So you need to find your way. You need to find a mentor. Like, this is where these sort of get-togethers are really good. You can pay for coaches and all that sort of stuff, but until you start meeting people, shaking their hands and getting to know people, that's when the true value comes through. Like, you can help each other. And even though we're sort of competing, realistically, we're all moving towards the same end sort of thing. We just want freedom. So we've got a few things that we're going to go through today. We were asked by Fabry to come here and explain to you how we sell shirts in Europe. So we pick a niche that we want to test that relates to a particular European subculture. We then create some designs that pique the subculture's passion and go about creating an engaging community through delivering value in the form of shirts and consistent interaction. So this sort of lends towards Chris's way of thinking, where we've got about 3 or 4 key niche pages where we build on that interaction, the engagement, providing constant value to people. So we've got one beard page where every Friday we'll put a post up, guys, show us your beards, and we'll get hundreds of comments. It's up to about 30,000 fans on there now. And just like constantly asking those questions. So Facebook's always changing their algorithms. And what happens, everybody's always up in arms. They're like, oh, my reach is just bummed out. Like, what do I do? But the thing is, Facebook was built on engagement, and they're going to reward people who continue with that. So if you've got a page where you're asking questions, you're running competitions, you're giving away free shirts here and there, like we constantly do it. When we're out and about and we see people, get their details and flick them a shirt. So, and then you start seeing all of these people in your designs, which is really, really cool. So the topics we're going to cover is the one-size-fits-all or a niche-specific fan page, pros and cons of selling in Europe, niche selection and design, advertising, targeting tips for Europe. Suhail's going to run you through a case study of a very successful campaign that we had go through Europe, tracking the data, retargeting, and some final points. So, do you need an established Facebook page with lots of fans to start selling shirts? The answer is no, and the great way about building these fan pages from the get-go, we always, if we haven't been into a niche, we'll typically spend the 5 extra minutes of just building out that page, put a cover photo on there, a profile photo, and launch ads to it. The beauty of this is, well, we've probably got 50, 60, we've got a hell of a lot of pages now, but what that effectively does is when you hit winners in these niches, you can build on the momentum, you can create them into these key niche pages where you're building that engagement. What happens, and the idea of building this engagement, and it's something that I've been trialing recently, is when we launch a shirt, what I'll do is just put it up naked. So it'll just be the image. And what happens is you'll notice time and time again, as soon as you drop a link into your post updates, typically your reach just dies. So I try to build on that initial social proof. Typically we'll sell a shirt here or there, and that really gives us a good idea that it's going to be a good campaign. But you get a hell of a lot more likes, you start getting comments early and shares. And then when we're ready to actually run ads to it, we'll edit that copy, drop the link in, and away you go sort of thing. The reason we do it like that as well is you can't edit the ads as a PPE ad when you've actually started running ads to it. So one size fits all fan page. So the pros start with a zero and build organically off the back of campaigns. Saves you time, allowing you to launch as many ads in one location as possible. Saves you time by not having to manage a community. Like I said, like you can have several niche pages, or with this, you can have a scalable message across many. And all that allows you to do, it saves you a hell of a lot of time when you start running these ads, and it's all in one place. And what you'll find is when you start scaling up your designs, that time is of the essence. So, you know, you want as much time effectively running ads, targeting, launching new designs, getting new ideas coming in, all that sort of stuff. So the cons, you've got no long-term assets, limited opportunities to promote other products and sell directly off posts, and no authority or loyalty. A niche-specific fan page, and this, as you've clued onto, is our particular or preferred way of running campaigns. So the pros, it's quite extensive, and you know, there's so many more. It's a long-term asset, so you can easily monetize the page through joint ventures and advertising. Once you start getting a few thousand fans on your page, you'll start getting approached by different companies. So whether you be in a motorcycle or beard niche, like you'll get people like Beard Balm saying, hey, can you promote this for us? And they'll give you money to actually promote that out. So, and it's a great way to just build allegiances in the community, and it sort of gives you a bigger, it takes you outside of t-shirts as well and start building a real, well, not a real, but a tangible business where you've got multiple revenue streams. And that goes into advertising as well. Pre-sales, ability to sell shirts before advertising is started. I touched on that before, where you'll often get like shirt selling without spending money. It's a really nice feeling. It's akin to printing money. Get ideas for shirts from the community by running competition and just asking the questions. So again, that engagement, the more engagement you get, you'll typically get a hell of a lot more reach on everything. So you'll start seeing the same people constantly coming in and commenting and hanging around, asking questions on your timeline. And well, the competition that we recently ran gave us a great idea for a shirt. And I think it's on its 5th or 6th relaunch, and it's still selling strongly. And it's one that we launched in the United States, went into Australia, and now it's in the UK and Germany. So, and we get everything translated. So we test it and make sure we've got a good message. So the biggest trouble for Suhail and I is we don't speak German, Spanish, or we speak English. That's it. So there is a big barrier to entry for us to try and enter the likes of Germany and Spain. Like, we don't get the colloquialisms, the phrasing, and all that sort of stuff. But you can get people that can do that for you. Bulk orders. So we had guys contact us and say, hey, we need 100 shirts for our club. Can you do a design for us? So that's another way of obviously just, it's a good payday. You do a quick design and there's some good money to be made. You get testimonials from everybody. There's nothing what I really, really love getting is pictures of people in your shirts, because that is tangible to your fans. They can see that it is real, it's not a scam, and they're much more willing to communicate with you as well. Subscriptions and continuity programs. So this is something that we've been testing lately. It's a really cool idea. We're charging people to get a discount on all our designs. So the niches that we're in, we're quite passionate about, and typically they're sports-based. And because I do the designs, generally we've got probably 5 to 10 designs per niche going out each week. So these guys are loving that they get access to this. And what it does, by them paying to get this discount, it provides value to them. We may not necessarily make a lot of money off them to start with, but it puts the initial social proof into the shirts as well. And they're typically the more passionate people within the community too. So they're the sneezers that are going to go out and tell their friends about our different businesses or niches. It takes a lot of time to manage the community, and that's the big one. But the good thing about that is you can easily outsource it. It can easily be systemized. It's just the easiest way to build that engagement on your page. So probably at least three times a day, posting updates, asking questions. So if you're horse riding niche, it's like, how many horses do you own? What type of horse do you have? How much was it? What color is it? Like, people want to be heard. And that's what it comes down to. That's why they buy shirts, after all. Everybody's got an opinion and they want to share it. So Suhail is going to talk to you about the pros and cons of selling in Europe.
Cool. Hi, guys. How's that work?
Forward and backwards.
Back. Cool. Thanks for all coming, for starters. We're really humbled to be here. As Ronnie sort of said, we started about a year ago, so we're still very much students of the game, and there's some great people here. We're really humbled to be here and to talk to you guys. So quickly, a few the presenters before us have gone into a little bit of detail about this, but we'll just go over it quickly again. So some of the cons of selling in Europe, to start with: cultural and language differences. So the language differences you can get around quite easily through the help of the Fabrily team. So some of the cultural differences as well, with sayings and things like that as well, they're quite handy with helping you with that because they have native speakers. We've also, when we were campaigning last year and getting into niches and stuff like that, using resources such as VAs and stuff, there's plenty of outsourcing websites where you can go and find German speakers and engage their services. One thing we did, which was quite successful, was approaching uni students back home in Australia, because we get a lot of foreign exchange students coming out to study for 6 months, 12 months or something like that. We'd pay them, for design ideas. So they would tell us, what might work. We had a German who we still keep in touch with. He's back in Germany now, but he was giving us ideas for Oktoberfest and things like that. So even though there's cons to selling if you're not a native speaker of that language, there's definitely ways around it, yeah. One thing you will find too is different tastes. The guys talked about that. Gary mentioned it as well. The different design styles that Europeans like, as opposed to Americans and Australians and things like that. Generally, Australia and America, like the same sort of styles, but you will find it's a bit different in Germany, France, Italy, those sorts of countries. So that's obviously a bit of a problem. Sometimes, generally what we do, we'll launch the shirt in English first. If it sells, then we bring it across here, and we will just translate it straight across, and hopefully, the translation fits nicely in the design. And then if it doesn't sell so well, then we'll change that design up. We also use different designs in English as well. So even though we might have one saying, we'll design it different ways, or Ron will design it different ways, just to try and get, some people might not like the original design, but like the saying. So we switch it up and sell that same saying multiple times. And that works, it helps us in Europe as well, because they like different design styles. So sometimes something that we started with, like the case study we'll look at, we did it in Australia and the US, and we sold a few shirts, and that's why we tried it over here. But we sold a heap more shirts in Germany, and we continue to sell more shirts in Germany on this specific thing than we've ever sold. And that just comes down to pretty much they like that design better. The saying's the same. Maybe they relate to that a little bit more, but I think it just comes down to the design, because we've redesigned that in English as well, and sold more back to the US than what we're doing. So Facebook targeting, you probably saw in Chris's demonstration a little bit when he came into the United Kingdom, as opposed to targeting the US. The data that Facebook gives you through audience insights and things like that is a little bit more limited through the UK, and then especially through Germany, France, Italy, those sorts of countries. So digging a bit deeper with external tools and things like that, there's still a lot of precise interests there, but they just don't come readily available to you. Facebook doesn't go, here, have this on a plate, like they sort of do with the United States. Pros, as Craig touched on, the size of the market, massive market, yeah, it's huge, and they're buying shirts. You see the amount of money they're spending, and again, relatively untapped. The cultural and language differences, that's a pro as well, because that's, there's a lot of people that go, oh, I don't know the language, I'm not a native speaker, this isn't going to work. They don't go to the hassle of getting it translated. They don't go to the extra effort of doing the ads, the Facebook targeting research and things like that. So when you come along, if you're willing to take those extra steps, or if you're a native speaker of German or French or whatever, and you start doing shirts into that market, they haven't seen it before, the cost of advertising is a lot cheaper, and they're a little bit more receptive to people who see Facebook ads for T-shirts day in, day out. Scalability, so... like Chris was saying, it's easier to sell the same shirt over and over again and find new interests. And the idea, I guess, or that a lot of people try and do, is find one saying and apply it to 10 different niches or 20 different niches, yeah, because it's so much easier to come up with one saying, spray it far and wide, and, hit 5-6 winners out of 20. In essence, like, campaigning in Europe does that for you, right? Because you can take one saying in English and spray it in different languages, right? Now, that doesn't work all the time, but like we've said, some of the niches we experience, the saying translates perfectly across. There's no differences in the way they would express it, and it works quite well. So we take a design. Obviously, there's a little bit of extra work in getting it translated and applying, the new text to the design. But it's minimal, and we get the opportunity to sell the same saying in English, in German, in French, in Italian, and so we scale our design out and make a lot more money off one idea than we otherwise would.
Can I just touch on something there? When you see all those shirts selling on the places like T-Scover and stuff like that, and there's thousands of shirts sold, just think of that through spending the extra time and getting it translated into all these other languages. There is so much money left on the table every day, even by these guys. Like, they've got, their teams in place where they're launching a hell of a lot of shirts. But if you bring it across into Europe, and that's effectively what we want to do, there is so much opportunity here right now to be able to do that.
Cool. Platform and support. So, Adil said earlier that, and it's obvious, Teespring acquired Fably, or partnership, that the Fably platform is the dominant platform in Europe. I'm going to take their word because I haven't used anything else. We haven't used anything else. So, but the platform is evolving, and if you've seen recently, it's evolving very quickly. They're always very receptive to feature requests, that we put forward, and the support that these guys give you, like, we're constant conversation with these guys all the time. If you have a question, if you have a complaint, someone says something in German, you go stick it in Google Translate and you realise that it's some sort of issue.
If it's got a question mark, it's always worked.
They're very quick to get back to you and resolve that for you. So they're really, it's like Craig was saying, it's a community where, they help us, we help them, and everyone's happy, sort of thing. So that's awesome. And finally, pretty obvious, but Europeans are people. They wear shirts. They have passions. They're passionate about their jobs. They're passionate about their kids. They're passionate about their sports and hobbies. Passionate about causes and things like that. So, and a lot of passions and things like that are shared across cultures. Yeah, it might be a slightly different passion, but the actual, the sayings and things like that do work across cultures. So. Yeah, like we said, we've seen success anyway in some of our niches, and it doesn't happen all the time, but that's the game. The T-shirt business, it's not guaranteed to make money. There's certain ways in countries where you can, increase your odds, and that's through, niche-specific pages and asking your fans for design ideas and things like that, and building that community. But it's good when you have that, but a lot of it, if you want to turn this into a business, I guess, you need to take some chances and you need to fail, So, I think for those reasons, it's worth everyone's time to explore Europe.
All right, so Niche selection and design. We found that there are two main ways to find a niche worth targeting. Chris touched on it earlier. How you're constantly testing and measuring. That's what you're doing. You're meeting people at events like this. You're seeing what they're doing, different strategies they use, and then taking from that what works for you. So. Option one is to use Google to find the most popular sports, hobbies, professions, etc. in the country of your choice, i.e. top hobbies of Germany, most popular amateur sports of the UK. And then particularly if you're passionate about an interest, it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for you to start really digging down into that. Especially before you have those successes, it's important that you've got something that you're passionate about. So if you're growing a community anyway, it's a pretty good thing. Use audience insights research to find there's a sufficient and targetable market. So we had a look at extreme ironing a few months ago. There's not a hell of a lot of targetable things in there like irons. There's, older people typically use them. Use Pinterest, Zazzle, T-Discover, Webster.me for funny or relevant messages, slogan for a shirt design. One of my favourite ways is Pinterest. Being male, I'm a little bit scared to say it, but I enjoy being on Pinterest because there's a lot of good content on there. And there's a lot of funny content. So you just mix up the message of how you're actually searching for content. So it might be funny horse riding humour or skydiving humour or something like that, and just keep tweaking it around because everybody hashtags differently and it'll show up. But there's different methods that people use when they're looking at these sites as well. If you see something, put it up there because Suhail comes up with all these ideas all day, every day, and I'll sit there and go, no, yes, great idea, let's do it. But the thing is, whether I like it, it's completely different or irrelevant to whether or not 1,000 other people like it, because that might not resonate with me, but sure as hell that the one I say no to is the one that's going to sell those shirts. So if there's any kind of humour in it, just get a design done and get it up there. So the option two is taking winning campaigns, which is the way we really like to do it because it's proven, obviously, and get them translated into the language of choice once known targetable market has been established. You got the clicker? Once you've found a winning niche, don't just leave it there. Start layering. So, men, women, this girl loves her runs, as in running. Marital status. I love it when my husband lets me go running. Other interests, run now, wine later. Occupations, account by day, runner by night, etc., etc. So, once you've found those niches, it's endless as to what you can do within that, especially when you start getting, well, it doesn't even really matter. The fans that are coming on there, obviously, are interested in it, and you're going to target them anyway. So T-Discover is a great way to find a design template that sells well. The layout, weighting of an image to fonts, etc., that clearly connects with the target market. We've found that Europeans are more inclined to purchase a shirt that's a little bit more refined than a big and bold statement print like you see in the USA, as Craig was saying. So don't rip people's designs. That's probably one of our biggest peeves of the industry. Be creative. That's what we're here for. There's room. Just tweak it up. Don't go and bomb somebody else's niche. There's plenty for all sort of things. So, go back.
All right, so we'll just do some quick advertising targeting tips for Europe. Chris went through some pretty in-depth stuff about using audience insights. We've got some other tools and stuff which help us initially and down the track as well. So Google Translate, Google Shopping for keywords and brands. So you can see here just a little screen grab running. So when we're looking at a new niche or something like that, obviously, like we said, we don't know German, so we'll go to Google Translate and just get the keyword term for running. Then we go and have a look at Google Shopping, and you see running shoes for women, running trainers, running machine. We can then go and put that into Google Translate as well, and find those other keywords, which we can then use in audience insights to find if there's a targetable market there, and interest we can target through our advertising. Yeah, as Gary said, we wouldn't use Google Translate to translate a slogan because it doesn't really work too well. But when you're just using one word or one or two words like running trainers, running shoes, it works quite well. So that's a quick way to get started without having to go the process of asking Fably for translations and things like that. And using keywords and things like that is, like we did that brainstorming session, looking for keywords for golf, what you'd look for. So, there's heaps of tools. Google's a good one, obviously. SimilarWeb and things like that. Amazon Shopping, when you start typing in, the start of a keyword, it gives you more suggestions on things to search for. So, and that can really help you when you're looking for things to target in your Facebook ads. SimilarWeb. So if you go and if you find we looked at magazines and things like that, or online shopping sites. So if you find an online shopping site or an online magazine, you go punch that into SimilarWeb, right? And it comes up and gives you a whole heap of things. It comes and gives you the countries that all the traffic's coming from. It gives you referring and destination sites. So you see, where the person was clicking before they came over to, runnersworld.co.uk. And then you see the destination sites that they go to. And, a lot of times they're browsing another running related site before they come to this site. Now, the beauty of things like this is, a lot of the tools that you find in Facebook for interest, quick interest finding is all keyword related, which is great if the keyword is related to the niche, like running, Runner's World, runners.co.uk. But if it's not related, they're not going to pick those up. Whereas when you're doing things like this, referring destination sites and things like that, you find running related sites that might not have running in the actual title, yeah? And you can use those as interest to target. And again, that it's not always the case that you can actually target it, but when you find the ones that are, they're deeper interests that people who, don't go digging for it aren't going to find.
They're free tools too, by the way.
Yeah, I think you can pay for a pro version. We've never paid for it. Organic keywords. So again, we looked at the running trainers, but there's a section in SimilarWeb. You should have a look at it when you get time. It shows you keywords that people search for to end up on that page. Visited sites and similar sites. So those are other things that give you different related pages that you can then go and dig deeper into, have a look on Facebook, have a look on their Facebook page if you can't target it, and get some information about that niche. So audience insights, again, Chris went into fairly deep detail in it. Obviously, we're using that for targeting. It's a super tool. Use English and native language keywords, combine them to see what interests come out. Use them separately as well to see what interests come out. Yeah, so we would put all our German keywords like running trainers, any German running magazines that we find, we'd put them in separately into audience insights to see what interest we get, and then vice versa, we'd do that with the English keywords, and then we'd combine them just to get all the data we can. Yeah, as you saw with some of those interests. They swamp all your other interests, right? Like when Chris put in golf or Rory McIlroy, it's sort of because of the size of those, it can weed out or hide, I guess, some of the more precise interests. So that's why we really spend a lot of time adding and taking out and different combinations of targetable interests using audience insights. Facebook graph search. So a good one is pages liked by people who like an interest. Now this is a bit, I'm not sure what happens with it, to be honest, but sometimes it returns really good results, sometimes it doesn't. So basically at the top of Facebook where you've got your search bar, you put in pages liked by people who like runners.co.uk, I'll use that example again, and then you go across to the pages tab of the results it returns, and that gives you a whole heap of other Facebook interests, which you can then use in your targeting. Or try and use in your targeting. Pages liked by page. So on Facebook, if you go to a fan page of something, again, I'll just go runners.co.uk. You come down the left on the side and you can see this thing, pages liked by this page. You can click that little arrow and it brings up all these other pages liked by that fan page. Yeah. So if you're not into the niche and you don't know all the brands or all the other pages that are related to this niche, like running, you come into here and you see all these other pages that are liked by it, which give you more targets. Yeah, Pearl Azumi running, like I would never, or Pearl Azumi run, I would never find that, by myself, sort of thing. But this gives you information because you're using, authority pages, big pages that are in the niche, and seeing what interests they like. International interests, this may seem apparent or maybe not. We sort of overlooked it to start with, and now I'm wondering why. But just because you're targeting Germany doesn't mean you can't, in your ad and interests, target US magazines and US shops and things like that. We've had great success even in the US selling shirts, targeting ads at UK-based shopping sites. Yeah, because if someone in the US is interested in horse riding or archery or something like that, and there's a German shopping site that sells that stuff and they like that page, then you'd have to imagine they're pretty passionate about it, yeah? If they're ordering stuff from overseas, really, really good results from those sorts of things. So shopping sites and magazines, international, use those. And then audience intersect, no one's really touched on this, but it's a valuable tool for targeting, especially through Europe where the data can be a little bit more limited. You don't want to go... does anyone know what audience intersect is? It's basically... It's a tool where you can... So basically in Facebook, the default targeting behavior, I guess, when you start adding interests all into one ad is to say or. So you could have running or horse riding, yeah? But you can't actually do running and horse riding by itself. Since Fably teamed up with Teespring, and Teespring had an agreement with a tool manufacturer or tool developer who's speaking later today. He's created a tool that lets you say target people who like horse riding and running. Yeah. Now, because in Europe, sometimes it's harder to find targetable, specific, precise interests. You can go slightly broader with your interests, but use those, likes Runner's World, running this, running that, and some running shop, and that sort of brings down. It gets you a bit more precise because it starts finding people who like multiple interests in that niche, and you can also use it to find people who like running and wine or running and yoga and things like that. So that's pretty handy. I know we're covering a lot today. Hopefully what you get out of this is you get familiar with these things, and then if you're starting out, at least you've heard of these things and you can start applying them to your campaigns. And if you are selling already and you want to bring your things across, then you can start looking at these to get some more interest. And all of these things actually work for English campaigns in America, Australia, UK, wherever as well. Like that's how you get deeper into your targeting. A couple of miscellaneous tips. So someone asked before about mobile and desktop. We always run both in Europe. For some reason, desktop actually converts pretty well in Europe as opposed to the US, where it chews a lot of your money and you don't get very good conversions. We still always test desktop in the US, but not initially generally. We'll always start a mobile ad and then add desktop later just to try it out. But right from the get-go in Europe, we'll always run mobile and desktop because we do get sales and quite good sales off desktop.
But not together, they have to be split. Because what happens in Facebook is, we've seen it time and again, is that they'll continually serve to mobile, and you'll spend, when you get a successful campaign, you'll have $80 spent on a mobile, and only $1.96 or something spent on desktop. So be sure to split them.
Cool. And the other last thing, if you are campaigning across different countries and things like that, ROI conversions is the key stat. Yeah. When you're used to campaigning in one country, you're always looking at things like your click-through rates or your cost per engagement or cost per click and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you're in one country, it's sort of generally you have set statistics like Chris was talking about, 12% click-through rates or 5% minimum, things like that. Now, that works okay in the US, but we've found quite varying results depending on the niches we hit in Germany and things like that. We've had some campaigns clicking through at 2% and we're still doubling our money. Like our ROI is still double. And, I've never seen that happen in the US. So always remember, you might have to just reset your baselines of what you expect out of your advertising. Sometimes it's much better as well. Like you get really high click-through rates. Sometimes you get lower click-through rates. But I guess the key is don't judge it based on click-through rates or cost per engagement or those sorts of things. ROI is the key stat. Yeah, if you're getting sales and you're doubling your money, tripling your money, whatever, then you're doing pretty well, I think. Cool. So we've got to sort of get a move on. Just a quick case study. So, just to highlight, I guess, the overall, flow of a campaign, I suppose. And we didn't do this all right either. Like, we missed some steps. Like I said, we're still learning new strategies all the time and things like that. But so this case study, a shirt we sold in the US and in Australia, and then we took it to the UK, and then we thought, well, we may as well go to Germany as well because we'd sold a lot of shirts to Germany in something else before, and so we thought, yep, we'll give it a go. Okay, I think we sold a couple of hundred in the US on a launch, and then a few more in Australia. Got the design translated, sold 648 shirts in about 7 days for $8,000 payout, about $3,000 advertising, and so we ended up with about $5,000 net. Not too bad for a shirt that's already run and won somewhere else, and for the sake of sending an email to get a translation and 5 minutes to put the new text on a design, and probably half an hour or an hour of targeting initially, to find out that we were onto something here, and then we could scale it through the whole 7 days. So the first step in anything, I guess, again, is determine that a targetable market exists. And targetable market's keywords, yeah? You need to be able to get in there and find sufficient audience with precise interests. And to do that, we use AI. Initially, we do it fairly broad interest just to see that there's enough audience there. And as long as Facebook's giving us that data of other pages liked by these people with affinities and things like that, then we basically would go to the extra step of getting our design translated and go from there. So step 2, campaign launch. So it's not only a translation for the shirt that you want to get done. Be prepared. Get your sales page copy translated. Get your Facebook post copy translated to German as well. Get your retargeting copy translated. We haven't really touched on retargeting yet, but throughout the campaigns that you run, you should be retargeting and use different sales copy on different ads. So and that gets quite standard after a while. So get all those things translated, and then you can use them over and over again down the track. Yeah. And pricing and product selection, colours. Pricing can make or break, and I think Craig touched on it before. But if you're not sure what price point to set in different countries in Europe, just ask the guys. If you're not sure what colours to create, to use for your shirts, just ask the guys and get that set up properly. And then finally, just make sure you have your tracking code set. An absolute must. Back when we first started, we didn't know what retargeting was. We didn't really, we weren't tracking like sales. It was crazy. It was just, I don't know what we were doing, but we'd see the sales come through, and we knew what we were spending, and we were just comparing ad versus ad, for statistics, which was, but save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money, and set this up, because 30 seconds here can make you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over a winning campaign. Okay, so conversion pixels are must, because it lets you track which ads are converting, right, and lets you scale effectively. Okay, so adding budget and things like that to the ads that are converting, and lets you maintain an ROI. And your retargeting pixel is really important as well, so that you can build your audience and retarget to them, and then also you have an audience for future campaigns which you can launch your shirts to, which you get very good return on investment on retargeting ads. And then Google Analytics. So Fabry's incorporated Google Analytics, and that's pretty important because they don't have variable tracking on their site. If anyone knows what variable tracking is, they don't have it. So the only way to tell which ads are actually converting is through Google Analytics and the flowchart through there. So make sure you set those up. So step 3 was the in-depth interest research. So at that point, after we had everything done, it was time to sit down and actually dig really deep with methods Chris talked about, and using those tools that we touched on earlier. to find decent interest. We set up an initial PPE ad on this at this stage as well, $15 budget. I think we had about 12 to 13 interests across different categories. So we always try and work with a couple of celebrities. Again, not the top celebrities, but a couple of celebrities, couple of magazines, couple of shops, couple of events, so just so that you're spreading across the group of interests that people in that niche might be interested in. I think that's out of Don Wilson's Ads Crack course, where he sets up a tree of different things to target and then groups it into it. So after we launched that, we launched all our shirts into Germany and anywhere. We try to launch the ads so they start first thing in the morning. Gives it a bit of time for Facebook to warm it up. You get some lunchtime sales, hopefully, and then by the time the afternoon, evening comes along, when people are buying, it's got a bit of momentum behind it. You've got a few clicks through, shares, that sort of thing. So we launched this one at about midnight our time, because it was
Australia.
So step 5 was a bit of a wait and see. I went to bed, woke up the next morning, had 7 sales off $12 ad spend. Pretty good start to a campaign. So we knew we were on a bit of a winner. Initial scale was budget up to $50 daily. Now, that's evolved a bit now. We wouldn't normally do that, but given such a strong start, we just wanted to capitalise on that. As Chris said, if you start bumping your budgets too high too quickly these days, you start seeing a big decline in your ROI. But this is what we did with this. So initial scale was to up that budget on our first PPE ad to $50, and then we started looking at more interest because we only started with a set, and there was a lot more there. So we started creating new PPE ads as well, just to see if we could find more interest that would convert for us. Cool. So then that ran for another 24 hours. It tipped. We'd sold 50 odd shirts for about $120 at that point, I think. And at this point, we actually had some real data because we had enough sales, we had enough clicks. We could then go into our Facebook ad reports and start seeing, male, females, age groups, and things like that that were buying. At the first stage, when you've got 7 sales, you don't really have enough data at that point. Well, we don't feel like we've got enough sales data to say this demographic's buying, because you've got 1 sale for women 35 to 44. I mean, to scale up on that specific demographic off 1 sale for us doesn't seem right. So, by the time it had tipped, obviously you don't usually sell. There's not often when you're starting out you're going to sell 50 shirts in a day and tip a campaign, but you need a few sales there before you can start splitting and scaling. You go and have a look at your Facebook ads report, and you start having a look at responder demographics, male, female, age groups, split and scale. And at this point, we still didn't know which interests were buying because we had bulk PPE ads set up. So what we then did is that clustering approach where we started splitting out those PPE interests into ads where we would split out and say, all right, so here's magazine interests, here's the shopping interests, here's the the forums interest and things like that, so that we could then start tracking which certain. Or it was a little bit more finer detail, so we could see which interests were actually converting. The reason why we didn't go down to single interests was because we didn't have the actual audience there. For the interests we chose, if we went single interests and specific age groups, we'd end up with audiences under 10,000, which we don't really like doing. We like to keep our audience size up a bit because it lets you scale into it a bit better, or we feel it does, and also. We've just got this feeling like Facebook has a momentum or something going in its algorithm where, the bigger the audience, the more momentum it can gain when it's converting, and you can scale up into that a lot better. So that's the way we went there. Obviously, there were some good interests that were quite large, and then we would split those out separately. But if we had less than 10,000 in a single interest, we wouldn't do that. So then we just kept scaling retargeting and started retargeting lookalikes. I think this was about the 4th day. So you're continually scaling, the converting ads, turning off the ones that aren't converting. Okay, so you've got to be making sure that you're checking reports regularly, once a day. We always leave it, 24 hours before doing anything. You don't want to be sitting there watching it every 3 hours and going, oh shit, I spent $10 and didn't get a sale. That happens, and sometimes you can turn off ads if you act too quickly. and you can cost yourself some money. So we just kept scaling. Retargeting. So this is where we started using our audience that we'd built already to retarget people. Say, who would click through to the sales page but hadn't bought the shirt. We'd say to them, did you forget to order? This is selling fast, get yours now. We'd start looking at our analytics to see which shirts were selling, which colours were selling, and start advertising different colours and things to them because they might be more receptive to that. And at this point, we also had sufficient sales and sufficient audience to build a lookalike audience, which is another Facebook tool. So that's what we did, and that really helped our sales as well. Lookalike audiences I think they're more behavioural based rather than interest based. So Facebook will generate an audience of people like an audience that you've already got, a custom audience that you've already created, or off a conversion pixel. But you'll see when you actually get to do it, it generates audiences of 1 million people, 2 million people, depending on which country you're going at. So to bring that down, obviously you start crossing that, if you like, or intersecting that with semi-broad interests related to your niche. And then at that point, we were basically, 4 or 5 days into the campaign. It was just a matter of continuous monitoring. We'd sort of exhausted, we thought we'd exhausted all the interest that we could target. We didn't really go and find new interests and start scaling anymore. We were just a matter of monitoring the ads that we had. We had a hell of a lot of ads because they were all, segregated by age and gender and things like that, 10-year groups. So we were turning off the ones that weren't converting, scaling up slightly the ones that were converting, and creating new retargeting ads as well as the campaign progressed, with 48 hours to go, 24 hours to go, and that sort of thing. So campaign wash up again. We sold 650 shirts, pretty good profit. We relaunched it straight away as well, and sold another bunch of shirts. But I guess the key points out of it are, it was successful because we first identified that there was a market there for it. Okay, we had a good design which we took across. We then also, you did the foundations right, like getting all your sales page copy and that sorted out, setting up your conversion pixels and retargeting and all those sorts of things nice and early. We did have this flowchart to go through, but we're sort of running out of time. So this is just Jessica's going to hand this out to everyone. So hopefully it'll provide a bit of value for the newer people who are here. It's one approach as well. It's not the be all and end all. There's so many different ways to do things in this game. And not everyone's going to agree with the way we ran this. But hopefully it will give you a bit of an overview of all the components that can go into a campaign, and from brainstorming ideas, niches to target, etc., all the way out to scaling, retargeting sequences and things like that. Cool.
All right. A lot of information, hey. The thing is, just to get started, I want to touch on the success we had back in March last year. It was with age campaigns, and we were up over 300,000 in a matter of 6 weeks. But it's against Facebook's terms of service now. So while that magnitude was there, it still exists, but there's just a little bit more work. And I can guarantee that there's another wave, something coming that's just going to open the floodgates again for us. So once we had launched those campaigns into Australia and New Zealand, we went through there twice before we actually started to move on. Had a bit of success in the United States. We shut a campaign down that was up to 1,300 sales because we thought we'd just infringed on trademark, and then 2 days later we were like, did we? And I had a look at the USPTO, and apparently it was a dead trademark, so we sort of canned it a bit early. But that's what made us go into Germany. So we're like, where are other markets? Where are the big populations that could be receptive to this. So that's around the time that we really started looking into Fably and getting the slogans translated. So, and it worked well because we sold over probably between 6,000 to 10,000 shirts there in a 2 to 3 week period, as Craig showed you before, is quite profitable. So tracking data, always know your numbers. Create an ad with variables, i.e. VAR equals mobile. Now the more experienced marketers in the room are going to know what I'm talking about right now, but when you're starting out, this is key, especially with your PPE ads, when you're creating those bulk ads initially. So what it's going to do is that variable will show up through the analytics and tell you what's converting. So it's very important. I've got it on the, so this is a website conversions ad. You'll have your URL, fably.com, Fably freaking rocks, bro. VAR equals desktop 1. And that's how it shows up in your analytics. You can't really see it here, but this is your PPE ad, and you dump your VAR, your variable over here. You create a unique one for each ad that you run, because that allows you to pinpoint exactly where the conversions are coming from. This I love, and I don't know how many people are doing it, but this is real-time overview of how many people are on your campaigns on Teespring or Fably. That excites me because I get to see exactly where they are on my campaign. So if they're landing on a store, so I've got a couple of people on there. And I get to see what variable they've come in on. So it's a lot of data, but it's showing you what's working. Boobs, I don't know what shirt that was. Buy checkout, that's my second favorite URL. And then another couple of specific campaigns I store here. And the thank you, that's a really cool URL. That means somebody's actually giving you some money. So when that flashes up, which is, it's exciting. Sorry?
What are we looking at?
So that's Google Real-Time Analytics. So that code that Suhail quickly showed you before. So you go into your Fably dashboard, you set Google Analytics up. It's quite a simple process. Just go to Google Analytics, create new website, I think it is. Campaign, yeah.
There's like blog posts and stuff on Fably, so just check that out. It's worth spending half an hour to do.
It's not even that. It's 5 seconds.
Start, so.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just amazing because it's almost freaky where you can see these people hanging out. This is reverse goal path. So this is where you actually, with Fably, track what variables are coming in on, where the conversions are. So the goal completion's over here. And that's how you're going to scale your campaigns out. Again, I think you need to set up the e-commerce. I did this a little while ago, but the other cool thing about that is once you put in your conversion values, it shows you how much money you're making Teespring and Fably, and your cut. So, just to create your ad, use Google Analytics to track variables, campaign spreadsheet, tracking daily cost per conversions, click-through rates, cost per engagements, cost per share, cost per website click. With Facebook, the conversions aren't always tracked. So you need as much data as possible to make informed decisions on what campaigns you're going to scale. So ensure you follow what products are selling in order to retarget as effectively as possible. Create retargeting for other shirts that are selling well. Fably Analytics. So I want to tell you about retargeting because before we... Yeah. So retargeting, we have a bit of a process here. So you create your audience. And the key statistics that I was excited about when I was looking into it is a lot of money is made by bringing back visitors. So people who have visited your campaigns, it boosts ad responses by 400%. So it's incredibly important to capture these people. Website visitors who are retargeted with display ads are 70% more likely to convert to your website. So once you've created these audiences, every new campaign that you launch, you're boosting ads to these audiences to start with. Create a series of retargeting ads. Day 0, forget to order. That's when somebody's just gone in. They might have abandoned cart. Day 1, other styles based on sales, other styles again on day 2, group of top-selling items, that might be a picture of all of them. Getting ready to close the campaign, so you just say something like getting ready to ship out orders, get your orders in now before they're gone, and final call for orders 24 hours to go. Again, it's just a matter of always having these ads running, so you're bringing back these visitors to give you the money.
Cool. So we need to wrap this up as we're just running a bit over time. So I'll just skip past most of this stuff. So just to recap on what we've gone over, I guess the most important things for us are, why not take your campaigns that you've run in English or campaigns you've seen run in English and apply them to the European market. It works. Yeah. It might not, but there's definite niches and things like that where it does work. So it's a pretty easy way to get started in this business. Definitely make sure that you're setting up your conversion tracking and retargeting and things like that. They're very important to scale up and scale big and make a lot of money for you in this business. And then obviously the targeting tricks and stuff like that, the extra tools and things we use in Europe which help us get that additional information that Facebook's that's a bit harder to get in Europe that you might get in other countries, yeah? So just quickly, this sort of stuff here, persistence is key in this business. You'll hear from a lot of people that people failed 21 times, 50 times, X number of times. But if you keep persisting, you'll get there in the end. Goal setting consistency. So set your goals, as in any business or any pursuit you have in life. If you want to make $10,000 a week, break that down into smaller goals like daily goals and things like that, and that will keep you consistent. You'll start working out how many campaigns a day you need to launch in order to sell that. Yeah. Keep innovating, testing, and measuring. So this comes back to Facebook advertising. It changes all the time, and it's different from niche to niche. So you might be running PPE ads at one point. Next minute, clicks to website ads start working. Next minute, website conversion ads start working. That sort of thing. So be aware of that. Become an active member in the community. One of the best things about what the business we're in at the moment is the help you get from other people. You might be in business by yourself, but you're not, all alone in there. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to help you. So jump onto Teespring News and Fabrily Insider to get involved in that. Quickly, always be learning. We're always buying new courses and learning new things. So whether it's education, coaching, mentoring, those sorts of things, or just chatting with people here.
We've got a rule that under $100 we don't even talk to each other. We just get the tool, because if we get one thing out of it, it's worth it.
Yeah, and then finally, just do it. Take some action. Get started. The potential's there. You've seen it. Everyone's talked about it today, and I'm sure you'll hear about it a lot more this afternoon. But this business we're in, it's here for the long term. You can set yourself up in this and become as free as you want, basically. So get started and yeah,
take action.